All right, we're live. 5 minutes till we are really live.
It's a little pre-show action.
If this guy calls up during the show, that we actually get in touch with him, we'll still put him on anyway.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And even if I'm just talking to Bill, it'd be a pleasure just to get him on the line there, even if we can't show face.
Perfect.
Yeah, don't worry about even though he's a very good-looking man.
He's a stud. He's one of the more built
Like
lacrosse players out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Soon, you'll soon be
You
like
wish
him.
you had the body of Bill O'Brien.
Show pic-
So, getting back to the Beyond the Game show.
We already got a little controversy happening right now on the Instagram on our
Yeah.
post for tonight's show, and I think it's kind of ironic, in a sense, because I think there's a lot of controversy going on in the sport of lacrosse that I think is getting swept under the rug and people aren't talking about it. So I think that's why we wanted to have this show tonight and not wait, even though it is a topic that we've always been itching to discuss. I think it's about that time that we bring it to the forefront a little bit and start talking about what's happening with some of the racial slurs and instances and experiences that are happening around our sport.
It's a little ironic that this past weekend was the coming together of all of the people that loved lacrosse going to Philadelphia to the U.S. Lacrosse Convention. I mean, I was down there Friday with Alexa, and, I ran into people. I ran into one gentleman, which we'll talk about tonight, that I haven't seen in 43 years.
I feel like a lot of people have that same story. Like the people that have been around the sport for so long, every time they go down, they're like, oh, there's always that one person I run into, like, hey, you coached me like 40 years ago.
Well, in this case,
Coach Chris said the same thing. One of our FLG coaches. She's like, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She's like, you don't remember me, do you? She's like, not really. She's like, 20 years ago, you coached me at like the Long Island schoolgirl team or something like that.
Oh, like a girl said that to Lisa?
Yeah, she's now,
Yeah,
40. She's 40 or whatever.
Now she's a
35.
coach somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But everyone has those experiences.
The young man that I saw, I use the word young man because he's older than me, and that keeps me a young man. So, that's how I'll put that. But his name is Peter Ginniger, and when I sat with him and spent a good half hour just talking to him about his lacrosse history, I knew him I was a 14-year-old boy, and he was a 19-year-old camp counselor. Mm-hmm. And it was ironic that his path of college coaching has taken him to now where he starts lacrosse programs in countries.
That's great.
And that's why I'm wearing the Uganda shirt tonight in honor of my boy Guinea. That's what we used to call him, Pete Ginniger. So
he was your camp counselor?
He was one of our
You called him
camp
Guinea?
Guinea.
It's a tough nickname.
He was
And this is a show on racism, so I don't know if we should be calling people guineas.
again, it's like Winky Winkoff, Guinea Ginniger. Come on.
Yeah, I guess that goes.
You got it?
Oh, that's right.
Okay,
'cause-
Mike,
'cause
all right.
Winky- Oh, I know, because winky is a derogatory term for.
No, it's not derogatory. It's a nickname.
He's Jewish, right?
He's Jewish.
Okay, so you're allowed to call him Guinea.
What's actually a derogatory name?
I'm not talking about my derogatory. You just want to get me going, Cliff. You just want to get under my skin tonight.
Stinky Winky is a derogatory name, I agree.
Yeah, it's derogatory, but it's not like racially or anti-Semitic.
Sure.
derogatory.
No. It just means that I have bad hygiene.
It is.
It's just
Yeah,
talking
you
about
can't
my
do that.
hygiene.
It wasn't 40 years ago.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
It was.
No, it wasn't.
Somebody-
But I guess your point is the reason you call him Guinea is the same reason people called you Winky. It's
Yeah.
because your last name sounds like that.
So anyway, Pete is a great man, and I'm hoping he watches tonight because he's an influencer,
Yeah.
and we're gonna do some things to help raise funds for the Uganda team. But
Oh yeah, big plans. We're bringing Lori in for that.
yes,
She's money at fundraising, for what I heard.
I'm telling you.
Pun
Well,
intended.
we'll
It's
get-
the beach for you guys.
this is gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
We'll get Petey Ginniger, who played lacrosse at Queens College.
Down in Charlotte?
No, Queens College.
Out in
Queens.
in Queens.
In the boroughs. They had a team back then.
Oh wow.
They don't have a team anymore. They have a
have
girls'
a girls'
team.
team, yeah,
They don't
yeah.
have a boys' team.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Do they have a girls team? Yes.
they do
we
have
got
a
our
girls' team.
We
They
got some
recruited
FLG
a couple
ladies.
of girls.
All right, so it's 7:30. Let's get after it.
Okay.
And then hopefully we can connect with Bill O'Brien and get him on. If not, we'll share a little bit about what he does and his story. So we'll roll the tape here, the intro, Beyond the Game, episode 10, Racism in Lacrosse. All right, welcome everyone tonight. This is our 10th episode. It's really our second official episode. We're talking racism in lacrosse tonight, a topic that we really just couldn't wait to talk about after what happened this past Saturday. We'll talk about the events of what went down in a minute and what's come of it, the conversations that are happening, people that are speaking up about it, and we feel as though we have to do the same because it's a really important thing that's not just happening in lacrosse. It's happening in sports in general, which we'll also get into. But before we talk about this past Saturday night, mention what you were doing down there, down in Philadelphia on Friday, what brought you down to Philly, and let's talk about the U.S. Lacrosse Convention and what that is and what you were doing.
Well, for years, we've been going down to the U.S. Lacrosse Convention. I can go back as far as when you were in middle school.
Yep.
And the U.S. Lacrosse Convention and the College Coaches Convention was one.
Right.
Which was cool when it was that because they used to have a round table of all the colleges in the country.
I remember that.
You were in 7th grade with Kevin Pagari.
We got several offers that day. It would be like the Roanoke coach saying, like, it would be me and Kevin having a catch in front of him. We had two hands. He'd be like, I'll take you right now.
That was awesome. And it was so cool because we used to go down there to help kids get recruited. High school coaches would go down there and they would literally come with their rosters and they'd break each kid down and say, this kid's talents and where the high school coach saw him playing, and they'd give their rosters to every college, and then the colleges would recruit off of that.
Yep.
You know, it was way before clubs started and all the craziness in youth sports. But anyway, now the U.S. Lacrosse Convention is by itself, and U.S. Lacrosse runs this convention. They do great demonstrations. They have great coaches that put on-field demonstrations on. It's a great event, and it's basically every lacrosse fan that loves the game of lacrosse attends this. I mean, refs, coaches, players, kids on Saturday. Friday is just for adults. It's more of the B2B, business to business stuff. And I was down there Friday on meetings and stuff, talking lacrosse more in the business sense.
What were some companies that you met with?
Well, League Apps, which is our back end, which is an awesome company. We met with them. Lax Sports Network, which the Beyond the Game show is going to be on their network, which we got to talk to Cliff about how we're going to get that up. And we're going to have an FLG Beyond the Game page so that all our episodes could be shown on their subscription. And by the way, Lax Sports Network is free. And it's amazing
They
network.
got some great content for the sport.
Oh,
and they got a huge following. They do a great job.
I love that network.
I do too.
And we got some great news about what they're going to be doing in the future. Who else did I meet with? We met
Sports
with Sports Recruits,
right?
Which is a great recruiting platform to help kids get recruited.
3D Lacrosse.
3D Lacrosse, which we partner up with. I met with Brooke and Greg. Saw Lax.com, saw Johnny Arix.
Talk about who else is there besides people that are, that do this for a living in the sports world. Talk about some of the vendors.
Well, the history of the sport is probably the best part for the people that don't, and a lot about what we're going to talk about tonight. I mean, there are people that are from American Indian tribes and reservations that make wooden sticks that teach you about where this game was derived from, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So you go into their booths and you meet the men that made lacrosse sticks.
Sure, and their families, and they learn from their ancestors. It's not like they, found a way to kind of reinvent the lacrosse stick or watch a video. Like they're literally their grandparents and their great grandparents passed down traditions of, hey, this is how the game used to be played. This is how the sticks were made. This is the evolution. Like you have all this great technology in the sport. We work with String King and Epic and all these great companies. Like it all started from, the natives playing on the reservations with, carved out bark and tree, and they made a stick like that. It is pretty cool. That was always one of my favorite things going down there and like getting a chance to
You have a
experience that.
stick.
I do.
Which we found when we were cleaning out that bedroom.
Yeah.
And that's a stick we got to put up in the office.
Yeah.
Because that's a stick that everybody that comes to our HQ should see.
It's a reminder.
They need to know the history.
Yeah.
Everybody should know the history. I think one of the great things about lacrosse is the history.
Yeah. It's so unique, and like the people that were here first, the original Native Americans who inhabited our country started playing this sport that is now one of the fastest growing sports, ironically now. It's kind of new in today's day and age, but it also is so old in so many ways. So
It's so funny because it's older than every other sport that's bigger.
exactly.
You know,
that's more popular
that's more
and more
popular.
people are playing. Baseball, soccer, football, you name it, volleyball, softball. Everything is bigger than lacrosse in reality. That's where it all started. So it's pretty unique. So, all right, so that's Friday, Saturdays, a little more for the kids. You got the vendors, a lot of different companies that sell stuff, giveaways, all that fun stuff. And then I know you weren't there, but from what I heard, Saturday night there was a huge National Lacrosse League game. So National Lacrosse League is the biggest league indoor
It's the box
in North America. So that's their box league. And it was a huge game between the Philadelphia Wings and the Georgia Swarm. And I think this game was actually working in conjunction with the convention, right? So people...
Yeah, they did like a promotion.
Right.
So it ended up being, the Wings sell out a lot.
Yep.
But they sold the place out.
It was like 15,000 people. And one of the biggest stars on Georgia's Swarm is Lyle Thompson, who's a Native American, played at Albany. He's not just one of the best players. He's one of the class acts in the sport. He's a great leader. He educates and teaches and coaches other kids on all these different reservations all around the country. And, him and his brothers, with the help of Bill O'Brien, they're building up a brand that's really doing a great job educating and teaching. And unfortunately, while he was playing the game, an announcer made a bonehead comment that is being pegged as ignorant, not knowing the history of the game. He said, let's cut his ponytail off, which then sparked a lot of people within the stadium to start saying, let's scalp the Indian, as Lyle's running up and down the field with the ball and a stick. Loud enough to where he was on the field. Normally you can't hear the roar of the crowd because there's so much going on unless people are chanting something in unison, and he hears that. And that's what kind of sparked a lot of controversy and conversation around the comment that was made. And I think I have to bring this up because I was just looking on our Instagram page, and a gentleman made a comment, for F's sake, the announcer didn't know the history, give the guy a break. And that's what people are saying. He didn't know the history, so that's why he made this comment. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you I should count to 10 before I respond. That's something my dad used to say to me, if something upsets you, because then you can think about what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Okay, that's ignorance. You want to talk about ignorance? That's ignorance, whoever would say that stupid comment on our Instagram, okay? The reality is, if you don't know the history of lacrosse, if you don't know it, you shouldn't be doing what that guy's doing for a job.
You're projecting basically a game that was created by the Native Americans in front of 15,000 people on a nightly basis whenever they have games. So to use that as an excuse is absolutely absurd.
There's no excuse for stupidity, okay? Ignorance, okay? We could sit here, we're going to talk about racism, and it's funny, I had this conversation with my family after this came out, my two daughters and my wife, and I said this to them. I said, I get it. I get that people are ignorant to certain things in life, okay? You were never raised with Chinese people, so you say something stupid, okay? But you should educate yourself. This is not where we are in this world, okay? Our world is at the point now where people have to, first of all, be cognizant of people's feelings. And you're talking about Lyle Thompson. He's the biggest star, arguably the biggest star in the game. Mm-hmm. It's ignorance.
Yeah. So, I mean, that really pissed me off seeing that. But like, there's a lot going on out there that also is it's disgusting, and it's not just happening in lacrosse. And I think it's important to bring up, which I hope we get into with Bill if we can get him on the show, and just what the ponytail represents for a Native American. That's something to talk about, but it's not just the hair of someone who's a Native American. It's the hair for anyone. It could be someone with dreadlocks. So you talk about the story of the New Jersey wrestler, right?
Yep.
Do you see that story?
I saw the story.
Did you watch that?
When the official, the wrestling official,
who has a history of making racial comments towards other,
made him cut his hair to compete in a wrestling match.
When he could have just covered. I mean, there are rules in place to, if someone doesn't want to obviously have to get their hair cut, which is ridiculous, right before a match, he makes him cut it. See, here's what bothers me about that, and here's the issue, because that puts that child in a lose-lose situation, and here's why. He decides, he decides to cut his hair, which he did. He went on to win the match, which I give him a lot of credit for.
Oh.
He let that referee even touch his hand, which I feel bad that he even had to do that and even touch that guy, because I'm sure he wanted to be nowhere near that person. And I give him a lot of credit for doing that.
He's a class act, that young man.
A class act. But then other people might say, well, you know what? Well, if you really didn't want your hair cut and you really believe in that, why'd you let him cut your hair? And so let's say he decided to do that instead. Okay? He decided, and all of a sudden, now he's getting slack from his teammates and his coaches. You work so hard to become a great wrestler, and you work to compete for yourself and compete to get recruited and compete for your team, and all of a sudden you let your teammates down because you say, you know what? I don't want anyone cutting my hair. I don't want anyone touching me.
Well, that's why he did wrestle, though, because it is a team sport.
Exactly right.
Because he's a team player.
I understand that, but it's a lose-lose situation if you kind of hear me coming.
He had to cut his hair, and that's something that was important to him.
Yeah, and how can you put a child in that situation? It's terrible. And like that's
well, again,
it just shows
everything comes back to the ignorance. And I have another situation that happened this summer. So this summer we brought back the New York State Empire Games in essence.
Explain exactly what that is. Go take through.
Well, the details is the Empire Games were started by the state of New York, and they were funded by the state of New York, and they had it in every sport: wrestling, basketball, lacrosse, soccer, boxing. I mean, it was unbelievable. Baseball, softball, and amateur high school athletes would play for their region. Long Island, Adirondack, Hudson Valley, Western, which is Rochester and Buffalo, Central, which is Binghamton, Syracuse, Ithaca area. And they would compete for a gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal. I was lucky enough as a dad to watch you compete in 2006 on the Long Island team for the lacrosse. And it was the coolest experience for dad.
Yeah, it was awesome.
But it was lost because of funding in 08.
Sure.
So we brought that back with the help of God.
Well, the Long Island guys kept it going.
The Long Island guys kept it going on
Nassau,
Long Island.
Suffolk was buzzing forever.
And they were killing it. And we just, through the help of a lot of men around the state of New York, we now have it going again. And last year was the first year we did it at Binghamton. And we ran a great event. All the kids stayed on campus, and it was a super, super event. During the event, we had a New York City team. And the New York City team had a bunch of African-American kids on the team.
City, they were Harlem kids, right?
Harlem
Some kids from the city, just from
Brooklyn
different
kids,
boroughs.
Staten Island kids.
Yep.
Okay? And they were playing a team from Suffolk County, and a kid made a derogatory racist remark twice to one of the African-American boys during the game, which was not heard by any of the coaches or the referees. After the game, the New York City coach notified us, and we addressed it. And that young man, who when we went to speak with him, said, yes, he did say that, okay? And we had to ask him to leave the event.
Right.
And the saddest part was that, but you know what was sadder? When we asked the young boy, when Coach Ancona spoke to the dad and the boy, they were more worried about the college coaches finding out what he said. So the ignorance went even further.
Yeah.
The bigotry, the racism, all of that. And that's really where it eats at your soul.
Yeah. I think, well, when you hear that comment from the dad, it's kind of like, well, not surprised why, their son might make inappropriate or ignorant comments, because that's usually where it stems from. But I think what's also really unfortunate about that particular situation is, the reason the New York City coaches addressed the directors of that tournament in the first place is because it was bothering that kid so much, to the point where the coach had to step in and say, listen, we need to have this young man's back. He's physically, he's emotionally upset. He's showing it. He's speaking it. His teammates are noticing it. It's going to could cause further conflict, which they obviously don't want. They want to rise above it. And I think that the fact that a young man goes up to an event that's supposed to be about, again, the sport, representing the sport the right way, playing at a high level, representing a region that's not traditionally, big in lacrosse. The urban areas are starting to grow a little bit, but those areas that aren't traditionally about lacrosse, but to go up there and prove they can hang a little bit, which they were doing. They were competing. They're coached really well. The kids were playing hard. They're good players. And then to experience that, I think, obviously would leave a really bad taste in someone's mouth, but would really upset someone who's just there to enjoy the experience. And no other player at that event had their experience ruined because of something as dramatic as that. You know, like if anything, someone's experience might have been disappointing because it was raining a little bit, or because they lost a game that they expected to win, or because, you know, maybe they made a mistake and their coach got under their skin a little bit. You know, to have your event ruined because of that is something that not a lot of players have to go through in the sport of lacrosse. And I think that's something that we need to bring to the forefront, the fact that you have a lot of minority players that are fighting to compete just like everyone else because they just love the sport and they want to play it. But they have to go through some things that not a lot of other kids are going through. So that's not something that I can say I went through, but that's something I can definitely empathize, you know, with and help kids. And I think one of the best ways to help them, which, you know, hopefully we can bring in Bill to talk about, is to educate them. Because I think someone like him is someone that can educate firsthand. But another way that we can educate, it's actually a great story that a mom sent me an email the other day. You know,
Was that Mrs. Ferguson?
Mrs. Ferguson sent me an email, and I think you know, as I read the email, I'm like, this is the perfect way to educate people on where this game came from and what it's all about. And she basically talked about how her two sons who play at Hartwick, you know, they actually compete with Lyle Thompson's cousin. His name,
Keenan, right?
it's not Keenan, it's Kanan.
Kanan?
So Kanan Thompson is someone that they play with. And the Thompsons, I guess, run a big tournament up at Oneonta every year. And
It's up on their reservation.
Oh, on the reservation, yeah. But it's
They go to school, Oneonta. Hartwick's in Oneonta.
correct. I'm sorry. So the you know, and the Thompsons, by the way, too, they helped the entire team with the lodging and the motels as they went up there and played in the tournament, which was really cool. And I think the experience just to play up there, you know, was obviously unique in itself.
Tell me you wouldn't want to play on the res.
Absolutely, 100%. And you know
I mean,
what?
I'm 57 years old. I want to play on the res.
I would love to
So
see you.
invite me.
Let's see. Bill, yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Lori.
Finish?
No, you
no.
cut in,
Jump in.
please.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Kent Jones, he writes 2 years ago, Nations United versus FCA,
Okay.
and then he says FCA player Catholics and convicts comment.
All right, so let's talk about what Nations United is real quick. And I know, and the abbreviated synopsis of what they're about comes from a couple of people that I've talked to, some boys who are in Harlem who aspire to play on that team.
On the Nations
and
team?
also on Nations United. And then also, you know, talking to Mark from the Blacksters blog, which we'll bring onto the show. You know, he's a great man in what he's doing for the sport, in that he's trying to promote diversity and, you know, a game in a great game. But anyway, so no, they basically find some of the best players who are minority players in the
cool.
sport, and they'll go out and they'll compete with the best of the best. So you talk about FCA, that's another team. So these minority players compete against some of the best teams in FCA. The comment about who the FCA guys, I mean, I just know the Kelly family.
Yeah, they're a
and
great family.
They're great people, so that's
probably one single person that made a stupid comment was on that team.
Yeah.
So it's not fair to throw FCA under the bus.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
we know Saul Bliss, who's FCA up in
Great man.
Northeast. They do a nice
the
job.
Kelly families are great people. So it's unfair that a stupid person wearing that jersey made a stupid comment.
it's just there's a lot of stereotyping, you know, and it's like, and it's the same thing with the Lyle case. Like every Philly lacrosse fan is like, you know, the worst in the world and they're racist. It's like, no, like, yeah, did a lot of people follow and join in that conversation, and did every one of those people who made those comments, is there potentially something wrong there that needs to be addressed and fixed? 100%, but not every person that was sitting in that arena you need to label racist, and not every person in Philly who's a sports fan is a racist or a bigot or, you know, a scumbag, because I just don't think that's fair.
Yeah,
you
a
know,
lot of it, like you said something earlier, it's taught. You know what I mean? Bigotry is taught. Now, we're at the point in our nation where we have to say, no, yes, it was your father, your grandfather, your ancestors might have been bigots. Okay, it's not okay.
Yeah.
And it's got to be stopped.
Yeah.
But you talked about Mrs. Ferguson's email. I don't want to get away from that.
Yeah, no, just going back to that real quick, I think, you know, the moral of that story is the experience that all those kids on Hartwick had was nothing but a positive one because of their interaction with the Thompson family and everyone they met on the reservation and the kids that they competed against. And most importantly, they got to see why Native Americans play this sport and what it means to them. And I think once you get exposed to that, you start playing and seeing the game of lacrosse in a completely different perspective. and you stop using the game. You stop playing for the wrong reasons, or maybe you move away from it, because I think that's what happens a lot when people are playing because they want to just go to college, or just playing because their parents think they're supposed to, or playing because that's what kids are doing in their town. And like, I just think I think that's a big root of the issue, and then the stereotyping is something that needs to be tamed.
Yeah,
as well.
I want to thank Mrs. Ferguson for sending that email.
Yeah,
because it
it's awesome.
enlightens us.
Yeah.
And we can enlighten other people from it. So thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. Yes.
So you're starting to get a little buzz here. So Katya Cobham says, it breaks my heart that in 2019 racism is still an issue. I commend you guys for talking about this difficult subject. So she's throwing you guys a bone. Now we start getting into, Anthony Merriweather says, why is U.S. Lacrosse not educating everyone that is under their brand? And John Cuozo said, Lyle just posted a statement on IG.
Yeah. So Lyle, first of all, talk about.
So let's unpack that a
So,
little bit.
right.
So to Mrs. Cobham's point, I do agree. It's unfortunate. It's kind of like you take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back.
Yeah, sometimes 5 steps back.
Yeah, sometimes 5 steps back. And there's comments that float around social media about, wow, I haven't heard someone say what they said at that night in the Philadelphia arena since I was in high school. And that's what's really disappointing, because that really shows you that wow, it's been a while since I've heard these hurtful words, and it just shows you how progress you feel. It's being made, it's happening, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, we're not there yet. But you know what? But we're getting there, and the purpose of this show, just so you know, and a lot of the media that we're surrounding this on, is not a negative one. We want to educate, because that's how we're going to push through here.
Well,
and
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So Anthony Merriweather says, should the history be a part of the level 1 training?
So U.S. Lacrosse they do have talks about this at their convention, and there have been talks, and there still are. And the level 1 training, I think the focus is a little more educating the game, and it's less on the history of the game, but maybe it should. And I think that's a good point, and that's something I'm sure we can bring up to U.S. Lacrosse.
I mean, I think that the police department has to go through a training on, how to treat people, or,
Yeah, but
you know what I mean? Like,
you know what it is? What happens in life is when something goes bad, we put everybody in that barrel. That's not reality.
but I think it's bad now.
Yes, it is. It is bad.
Do you know
And
what I
it's-
mean?
And it's like Corey said, you can't make every Philadelphia lacrosse fan a racist.
No, you can't.
You know what I'm saying?
You can't.
There was, kids do stupid things when other kids do it, and they don't even know why they're doing it. We've seen that happen. How many times have you asked a question to a bunch of 10-year-olds and they all raise their hand and no one has an answer?
Or
they
they
raise
ra-
their hand because the other ones raise their
Well,
hand.
you try to educate everybody. There's always going to be 1 or 2 that fall through the cracks. That's just inevitable. You
But-
try
but
to
the-
educate everybody about
You know
it.
what? It all starts in the house. And let's be fair.
Yes.
Everybody wants to blame someone else. You know what? When Corey screws up, it's my wife's fault. He doesn't screw up a lot, so it's good. But the bottom line
It's
is
a humble brag right there, this guy.
But the reality is that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the truth. It starts in your home.
I think, yeah, and I think the home is where you can really reinforce these messages. I think, if a parent feels as though what we're talking about tonight on our show is important, like, are they pulling their son or daughter along, saying, hey, you got to watch this, or
Right.
what are they sending them or posting to them, or and
The worst thing, not to
reinfor-
interrupt you, Corey.
Yeah, no.
The worst thing that I ever hear. Frankie doesn't have me on camera though.
Sorry.
that's probably a good thing.
But,
no worries.
but you can have Corey's picture of me talking.
There you go.
The
Move your mouth.
worst thing-
Move your mouth.
The worst thing you can do, from a parent standpoint, and as I lose my thoughts as I'm thinking about it, is to blame everybody else when your kid screws up. That's the biggest thing I see in parenting. Oh, my kid doesn't play because of politics. Oh, this is this. It's all bullshit. Okay? Teach your kid to work harder. Teach your kid to thrive through things in life that aren't easy, and you're going to make a better person. It's okay.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of parents that understand that, and I think there's parents that are doing that, and I think there's also a lot of teachers that are doing that. Let's talk real quick about, as we try to get Bill on right now. Talk about Desmond Megna, what he's doing with his program.
Well,
Because I saw
that's
an
a-
interesting comment.
that was a great comment. I got to tell you something.
And talk about who he is.
You're talking about, now we know Des really well, right?
Guy's the man.
He's the great guy, and he's a great coach. He's the William Floyd High School lacrosse coach in Suffolk County.
And he's also talk about what he does with the New York State event.
Oh, and he's also very involved in the Nassau-Suffolk event, putting together the Suffolk teams, the Nassau teams. He's a big part of that whole event.
Yep.
But more importantly is he coaches on a Suffolk team that is a football school.
Big football.
And not all the football kids play lacrosse.
Right.
Because if they did,
They'd be probably Ward Melville.
exactly.
Yeah.
If you got all those William Floyd kids,
Which he might eventually.
God willing, he will. But
Hopefully the football coach isn't watching the show tonight.
well, they all should play lacrosse.
No, he has a good relationship with them.
Anyway, he what did he DM us? He DM'd
He
us.
posted on our, just like that other knucklehead, he posted on our Instagram.
And he said, we should have on our show, which now we're going to have on our show, his starting first midfield. His starting first midfield, obviously, from what he said, is 3 African-American young men.
One of the only that we know of, or he mentioned like, I don't know. Of
Well,
another-
Harlem has 3,
they have
and
a
they're pretty
they have a
good too.
first midfield.
And they're pretty good
Their
too.
first midfield's good.
So, but that's great.
It's awesome.
That's great for the game.
yeah.
Good job. You got Big Bill? Yeah, Billy!
Yeah, my man.
What's up, buddy? You're looking good, man.
Oh, we can't hear him. So how can we hear Bill?
Yeah, you guys will be able to hear him in a second. I just gotta.
We're going to get you
All
on
right, so
so
I
we
have a
can hear you,
question
Bill.
for you.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a
while
question
while they
coming in.
do that. So Kent wants to know, so if you raise the issue to a systems level, how should coaches, team administrators, referees, and tournament organizers respond when something happens?
Just the way Joe Ancona
Oh.
and our staff, they did
Talk,
such
talk-
an amazing
talk about
job.
how that was handled.
Okay, so
as we hopefully can hear Bill soon.
part of the guys that help us run the New York State event, he's not an athlete. Part of the guys that help us with the New York State event, okay, and you can just give it to Corey, and are educators, 30-year retired educators, guys my age and a little bit older, and they did such an amazing job to go and educate this young man who said this stupid comment and his father about how it's just not going to be tolerated. It should not be tolerated.
There should be consequence.
Talk
You know.
about what happened when thank you. When you walked in and you saw the Harlem Boys. There was
Oh, in the cafeteria?
the opposing.
Well, the cafeteria was very tenuous because you had these Suffolk kids that realized they had a group of New York City kids. And the irony is, on the New York City team were some kids from Long Island that had to be on the team because they didn't have enough players.
yeah, sure.
And these Long Island kids that were playing on the New York City team were so upset that they were, there could have been fisticuffs. And Coach Ancona, thank you. Coach Ancona did an amazing job, calming the kids down and ending up telling this young man it's time to go home.
Yeah.
There's no conversation.
Let's talk with Billy here.
All right, we got Billy. Let's bring Billy in. We got Dr. Bill O'Brien. We're going to make him a doctor tonight.
Bill, what's up,
I
my
like
man?
that. I can work with that.
Got to raise his volume, Frankie. Trying to get your volume up, Billy, so the whole world can hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Perfect.
Good, perfect.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Doctor, I can work with that. I like that.
You like Dr. Bill O'Brien?
I do like that. Yes.
It's a nice ring to it.
I got to tell you something. Corey showed me your blog post, and I was blown away by it, man. Great job.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
And Bill, we definitely want to get into that. Before we do, talk a little bit about just who you are for people that are watching the show that don't know you. Talk about how they can follow you, the things that you talk about. Just give us the whole rundown of what you're all about, my man.
Cool. That sounds good. Yeah, Bill O'Brien, professional lacrosse player for the last 5 years. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, playing football, ice hockey, and lacrosse. I went to school at Sacred Heart University, where I studied business administration and marketing, and I actually had a football scholarship. So I played 4 years of hard-nosed football, and after my college career, I wanted to pursue a career in the NFL. Got an opportunity to train with the Buffalo Bills for a little bit, and then that didn't pan out. So I picked up my lacrosse stick again and started playing for the home team, the Onondaga Redhawks. And at that same time, I worked very closely with my best friend, Jerome Thompson, and his brothers, Lyle, Miles, and Jeremy, to start Thompson Brothers Lacrosse. And for the last 4 years, we built that company. And then last year in November, I kind of took a step away and have began focusing on some other things that I want to do. For instance, Thrilla Nation, where it's essentially me, but I look to entertain, I look to educate and provide opportunities to young athletes, underprivileged athletes, and show them that through hard work, success can be reached. So that's where I'm at now on Instagram, Thrilla96. My website, thrillanation.co. Facebook is facebook.com/Thrilla96. So pretty much you can find me anywhere as Thrilla96.
Awesome, man. I feel like just listening to you, following you, I'm pumped up. I'm motivated.
Yeah,
Just like,
I want to lift weights.
and it's comical watching him lift weights, let alone me. So Bill, we want to get right into it. Your blog post was really powerful, very well thought out, and read well. I want to talk real quick about the title. Let's snip that ponytail. What does it mean, and why was that the title of your blog post?
Because that was a statement made by Shawnee Hill, the in-game announcer, and it was, as I write in my blog post, it was kind of an eye-opening, mind-boggling experience where I was sitting in a booth. My buddy who plays for the Philadelphia Wings, Zach Reed, hooked me up with some tickets. So I went to LaxCon, I experienced LaxCon, and then we, just as 15,000 other people did, we went from LaxCon and we shifted over to Wells Fargo where we could watch the Swarm take on the Wings. And from there, I just remember watching the game, Lyle having the ball running down the left side of the field, and the announcer saying, "Hey, Philly, let's snip that ponytail." And at first, I honestly didn't think I heard it right. I kind of looked at my buddy Nicola, and I was like, "Did I just hear that?" I was like, "Wow." But all game, the in-game announcer was that's kind of what his job is, to rattle the other team. It was like at times he was like, "What kind of shampoo does this guy use?" Or, "Oh, it's the Bumblebees. It's not the Swarm," which is all fine and good, but as I kind of mentioned in my blog post, the statement, I think, whether he knew what he was saying or not, there's so many layers to it that it was, like I said, it kind of mind-boggled me for an instant. And I'm not that sensitive of a guy, but it took me aback for a second.
Can you talk a little bit about what does the ponytail mean to you? And I think the educational process is something that we have to turn to here, because there's a lot of ignorance and there's a lot of stupid comments, and I think I don't think people sometimes realize the impact of what they say, and I think this is kind of a good example of that. There's a lot of people that are defending, like, "Oh, he was ignorant and doesn't know the history." It's like, well, you're commentating a sport, and there's 15,000 people listening to you on a night. I think you need to know those things. So do you mind just kind of sharing with us the significance of the ponytail?
Yeah, so in Native American cultures throughout North America, long hair represents several different things. To the Haudenosaunee, having long hair as a male represents your connection to Mother Earth and all living things. So there's a spiritual aspect to it. In other cultures, it represents you being a warrior, or even it's your power of perception is increased when your hair is grown long. So there's definitely cultural significance to it. And like I said, different cultures throughout North America, indigenous cultures, have different beliefs. But at the end of the day, it all is very close to home. The long hair represents indigenous people. It represents family, community, history, and heritage.
Did you get a chance to talk to Lyle, like how those comments impacted him, and how he's trying to move through everything and kind of go from here?
I did not get a chance to talk to Lyle specifically about this. I talked to one of his teammates though after the game, Leroy Halftown, who's he's a Native American from Seneca Nation. I play with him for the Onondaga Redhawks over in the summer, and he had told me that they were pretty upset in the locker room, and rightfully so. Something like that is, for instance, just knowing the history of Native Americans and in the indigenous culture, there were a time when young Native American men were taken away from their homes and their hair was snipped. And they were put in boarding schools, or they would call them like all white schools. And the initiative set by the U.S. government was kill the Indian, save the man. And now this was within the last 100 years that this was taking place. So, the atrocities that have taken place and the symbolism of cutting a Native American's hair is, there's so many layers to it, as I mentioned. I'm hopeful that Shawnee Hill, the in-game announcer, had no idea. And I don't believe he represents the Philadelphia Wings sentiment or the sentiment of the city of brotherly love. I'm hopeful that it was just a very ignorant statement and can be used as an opportunity to shine a light on the history of the game. Because obviously lacrosse is a Native American game. It's been played since the dawn of time by the Haudenosaunee people, the Iroquois, and stick and ball games have been played by indigenous cultures, from the Choctaws with their stick and ball to the Ojibwe with their style of lacrosse, all having spiritual meanings, all tied to traditions, heritage, and culture. So if nothing else, it's an opportunity to shine a light on the history of the game while fueling the future of the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the things Corey said before you jumped in, Bill, was that we got to use this now ignorant comment to educate society, no different than some of the other things that we've seen in our society over the last few months/years. And I think the most important thing is, as you know from being part of the culture, and you were at LaxCon, so you got to experience I don't know if you were there Saturday, but if you were there Saturday, you get to see all the little kids, and they get to walk up to the Paul Rabels of the world and the Thomas Schreibers of the world, and look up to, and even on the girls' side, Ole Miller was there, and Sammy Joe was there, and all the great men and women players are there, and that's I want my kids that we get to affect to realize where this game started, and they should know that. I mean, obviously, we're lucky enough to have Native Americans that are superstars in the game, so they can see, because I think it's important that everybody knows that, and I think the more we talk about it, the more we educate it, the less ignorance will be out there.
A question just come in, Lori?
Yeah, so Anthony Merriweather said here it goes, talk about racism. He says, let's be honest, a lot of these parents front the money for their kids' teams so they don't have to deal with other ethnic groups.
Okay, well that's a comment about somebody who's now being a bigot towards somebody who has money. So the reality is we don't want this to become a who has and who doesn't have. Because the reality is, as Bill will learn a little bit about, what Corey and I are about in our organization, we want everybody to have. And when we say have, we want everybody to play lacrosse.
To experience it.
To experience what I did, and now what I get to coach and watch, what Bill did, what Corey did, and everybody. So that's what it's really about. It's not about the haves and have-nots, it's about the alls.
And you have Dwayne Dotson says, it's extremely ironic that the incident took place hours after the panel that addressed being black in lacrosse, such a shift in focus.
Yeah, Bill, can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you to kind of have to experience LaxCon? I'm sure you had a bunch of friends and buddies there, and you ran into people you hadn't seen in a while, and then unfortunately to experience something like that, that night, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I had a great experience at LaxCon. I talk about it a little in the blog that I wrote. It was what you expect a convention to be. It was all these companies lined up with vendor space, young kids excited to see what's new in the game, and companies trying to turn a profit, build brand awareness, things that conventions bring. And that's great and all. You know, they had the superstars of lacrosse talking on panels. I got to see Jesse James West and the Lacrosse Network talk about how to build a YouTube channel. The Lacrosse Talk Radio was there running their show all day long, interviewing athletes. It was cool. I had some young aspiring lacrosse players come up to me, ask for pictures. It was a fun experience. Exactly what you would expect from a convention. But with that being said, I mean, I want to challenge lacrosse to not be just a regular convention. Let's pay respect to the history, pay homage to the sport's history and where the game comes from. Native American culture, if you come up to Onondaga, lacrosse is viewed as a gift from the Creator. Literally, a religion. A lot of people can't understand that. And trust me, I get it. It's a difficult idea to grasp, an idea to concept, a concept to understand. But if you come to Onondaga and you step in the field house or you walk around the old box where legendary players played, you get this feeling, you get these goosebumps, you feel this energy. I was talking to my buddy Rocco Granato, and he said when he came to the World Games in 2015, the feeling he got, he said it was like traveling to the Mecca for a lacrosse player. He's like, it was like no other experience he's ever had. And like I said, it's a hard concept for people to understand, but lacrosse is intertwined into the religion, the culture, and the heritage of the Onondaga, of the Iroquois people. So it's much more than a game. It's not just, hey, let's strap up and play Saturday night.
Yeah, it's a religion, right? It's a religion.
Exactly.
I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. You had a question, Laura?
Yeah, the question is actually, or the comment is really to Bill. So it's from Kent Jones. He writes, Bill, the NLL spans both Canada and the U.S. Is this issue as prevalent in Canada as in the U.S.? My son had the honor of playing intermediate and JRB box in Vancouver. He loved the experience relative to his experience as an African-American player in the U.S. South. Also during this time, there he got to meet and play with several Native American players.
Cool. You catch that, Bill?
I did. And I believe it was Kent who had wrote in. Well, Kent, listen, I don't want you to think that what Shawnee Hill said is a prevalent ideology shared by people in lacrosse, because a lot of lacrosse players who are well educated and know the history of the game have a respect and an affinity towards the culture and the heritage of the game. And from my time in high school, throughout college, throughout where I am now, you've seen the barrier be broken down more and more, which is a great thing to see. You've got people like Joe Von Miller speaking out against certain injustices. You've got Miles Jones representing as one of the best players in the game for African Americans. I mean, probably the most iconic lacrosse player, Paul Rabel, he's Lebanese, you know? So it's a very culturally diverse sport. And the more you're able to travel to different areas, play different teams, you're going to see that there's ignorant people everywhere. But the overall feeling of lacrosse is, I think, a mutual respect when it comes to player.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you, Bill, because it's funny, you know, being a little bit older than most of you, when you say the word lacrosse, when you're on an airplane sitting next to a person that you've never met before, if they've had anybody in their family play the sport or be involved in the sport, it becomes a conversation where you and they know somebody together. It's unbelievable. And I don't know if you can't really say that about other sports. I mean, obviously, but like, they're like, oh yeah, where's he from? Oh, and then all of a sudden it's like, you're like a cousin half removed. It's an unbelievable fraternity.
Yeah, I also think Bill's comments, lead us to believe as more and more people start to play and the sport gets developed in other countries, I think, the diversity in the sport that Bill is talking about might seem more prevalent, which it is, because that's what kids are watching on television. That's what kids follow. And I think think about what FIFA is today. And, people think about the sport of soccer as super diverse, but I think a lot of that comes from the explosion of it around the world. And then to get to see it on one of the largest stages, I think is a huge part of it. So I think as some of these international competitions and the Olympics it starts to happen, I think maybe people will see lacrosse in a different eye. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, Bill, too. How are you noticing the game changing on an international level, and what is your involvement in that, if any?
Yeah, I think on an international level, lacrosse is growing at a very fast rate. I think there's interest being gained from Asia to Europe. Europe's always had a fairly large foothold in lacrosse with England and just Americans going over and teaching the game. But now it's cool to see in Asia and other parts of the country, or the world, the game growing. I was talking with a guy from Jamaica lacrosse who was inviting me down, come teach some lacrosse because the kids down here love it and they want to keep growing. Uganda played in the last World Games. I mean, it's growing at a very fast rate, and I think that it's our responsibility as professionals, as leaders in the sport, to teach that history, break down those barriers, and be inclusive. I can tell you that here in Onondaga, whether lacrosse grew anywhere else or not, the game would still be played. It would still be the most popular sport in Onondaga and in the Iroquois Nations. The Onondaga Redhawks that I play for in the summer is probably one of the oldest teams in America. Guys have played for the Redhawks. You've got Freeman Bucktooth, Oren Lions, like legends of the game played here.
Is Freeman Bucktooth related to the Bucktooth was that his dad, Brett Bucktooth?
Yeah. Yep. Brett Bucktooth.
Really?
I actually
because I
played with
played
him in New
against
England for 3
Tarbell
years.
and the goalies, Travis Solomon.
Yep.
Right? Those two guys from that area as well?
They're actually from out west, but yes, still New
They played
York.
at Cuse back in the early 80s, late 70s.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, they were
great players.
Tarbell, he shot like 100 miles per hour, that guy.
Those Tarbells still are shooting here, and they still all shoot fast. So it must be in the blood.
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So, Bill, do you mind just recapping one last time, how everyone can follow you and continue to, get your message out to our audience that's tuning in tonight? And obviously, a lot of people are going to tune in after we share this because it's a really important topic, and I think a lot of people are starting to get involved here.
Definitely. If you guys want to read my blog post, you can check it out on thrillanation.co, on Instagram, Thrilla96, on Facebook, at Thrilla96. I think before I go, and I just want to let you guys know that this is a very important topic, and it was great for me to see the lacrosse community come together and support Lyle, and kind of stand against the things that were said. There's people like the Wood Lacrosse Sticks down in Philly, B. Laxer blog. I see people, even from Paul Rabel down to teammates I play with, speaking out about the injustice, and that's not how you're going to treat any lacrosse player. So us coming together and being a tight-knit community, I think, is huge. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Bill. And if you don't mind, just spread our conversation that we had tonight through your network. We'd really appreciate it, and I think it'll really help us as as we just look to educate people that need to know more about the history of the game and what it is all about. So thank you so much again for coming on tonight too.
Thanks, Dr. Bill.
Thank you, Mike and Corey. You guys are the best. Keep crushing it.
Thanks, brother.
Take care, brother. That was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, his presence.
That was awesome.
Gets you pumped up, right?
That was awesome. Yeah, I felt bad that I didn't work out this morning when I saw him.
I got a couple curls in, so I feel okay about myself, but I still feel bad.
Yeah, that was great. He's a guy that I'd want, to be around our kids so they can learn from a man like that. And I think it's so important. There's so many great men and women that are out there now that are teaching the game of lacrosse, teaching the history of lacrosse, teaching the young athlete, not just. And it's funny. It's like lacrosse to the Onondaga Nation, to the reservation, to the American Indian. It's not a sport. It's a religion. It's a way of life.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful. And I think if more kids could respect that, more kids will realize. And it doesn't have to be lacrosse, but that's what you should do. You should follow your passion.
Yeah.
That's when you watch Lyle and you watch these guys play, it makes more sense now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you used to love. That was your favorite team when they were playing.
Yeah, it's special to get a chance. It's a treat. It's
Yeah,
it's
treat.
a privilege to get a chance to see with your own eyes someone like that.
It's kind of like watching LeBron play basketball.
Yeah,
Remember when
it's a
when Corey was 21? This is a great story. When Corey was 21, I go, what do you want for your birthday? He goes, I want to see LeBron play.
I was like, I'm not a snob usually about seats. I was like, I got to get close and see this.
And it's funny because on his 21st birthday, they were playing in Philly, and we got great seats, and we got to watch, obviously the greatest basketball player of your generation play, and that's what was like.
But it was also, and the reason, the reason behind it's the same. It's the way he played the game. And I remember the game. He had a triple-double, and I was so impressed. I was just as impressed by, him boxing a guy out and getting rebounds and how he played defense and how, to how he scored points. And, it's just, I don't know, like, the history is different when you compare basketball and lacrosse, but it's totally the same when you talk about how some of these athletes.
Do you remember when Albany lost to Notre Dame in overtime? I think did Kavanaugh have the winner, and you were rooting for Albany.
Yes.
So Corey was the last person to leave Hofstra Stadium.
Besides
the
Thompsons are still there.
The Thompson family
and Eric Dunn
and you.
Yeah. No, I mean. It's true, but I think the biggest thing is we have to move forward from this, and we can't make it catastrophic. Which I think, speaking to Bill, it really, you can tell he's a stand-up guy, in that he's like, hey, let's give this guy a second chance. Let's figure out how we can use this as a platform for good. And I think that's such a good point. And as this sport explodes and more people are watching and playing, that's an opportunity to get a message out there.
Take a negative and make it positive.
That's it. So we'll be doing more of that next week. So hope you guys can tune in. We got a pretty sick show next Tuesday night.
Oh yeah, we got Murph.
Kidding me? Mike Murphy, who coached me at the University of Pennsylvania. He's one of the most impressive men I've been around, and he's a mentor. He was my coach for 2 years, and he's going to help us talk recruiting.
Tommy Mariano, the pace coach, who's also the coach of Florida Launch, the MLL team.
Yep.
He's the pace coach, and just got one of our stud
He's our D2
midfielders.
representative, yes.
The D2, and D3 is Dave Campbell, Middlebury. And the other things that we want to talk about is, check us out on the BYGlacrosse.com, because you can
right on your phone. You can do it right on your phone. BYGlacrosse.com. You can see every episode.
Every episode. So if you missed an episode on the girls recruiting,
next day,
on parenting,
we'll put it up there the next day.
On recruiting,
bang,
on everything, and these are going to be up there forever.
And it's going to be on the Lax Sports Network.
That's right. That's
pretty
cool.
The biggest network in the sport. We're throwing it up there, so it's going to be pretty good.
So we're going to be back next week with the men's recruiting show.
Men's recruiting show. You got to follow us on Instagram though at FLG Lax. That's our biggest network right now.
Yeah, you do a really good job on
that. We just started a BYG Facebook page. BYG YouTube page.
Oh, yeah?
You can email us now if you want. No one knows the email yet. I don't even know it yet, but you will soon tomorrow, hopefully. We got to create one. But it's going to be good.
This was a great show. Great show.
I had a good time.
I want to thank Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, Bill's a stand-up guy.
I want to thank Frank. I want to thank Cliff, even though I'm mad at him. I want to thank Lori.
Lori absolutely crushed it.
Because Cliff's going to be 60 on February 8th.
Why are you mad at me?
And I want to see everybody back next week.
And
why are you mad at me?
Why are you so mad at Cliff?
I don't know. He just got me going early.
That's good, Mike. We like when you come in with your boxing gloves. I'm going to buy you boxing gloves, Mike.
Mike, that's my job.
I know. You do a good job.
And if you're
pissing you off.
And if you're looking for a good date spot and you live in any of the bigger cities, go to this. What's it
the
called?
City
City
Winery.
Winery.
Go to the City Winery. This place it's an urban winery. I've never heard of it. That sounds really cool.
We're going there on my birthday.
We're going
And
there
we're going there
February
for-
9th.
we're-
If you guys want to all meet there,
We're all crashing.
let's Spain.
We're
City
crashing.
Winery in Manhattan.
We're
All right,
crashing the
let's
party.
call it a night.
All right.
Love y'all.
Have a good night, guys.